I would be thinking about you as I was recovering.
Yeah, that's what I, that's
Here, there's app library and widgets on your home screen.
What are like some of your favorite stories or like moments that you got to cover over the years of being a photographer and or a photojournalist? Like you already done listed out like some amazing accomplishments and things that people never even get a chance to do. Like what are some of your favorites in your career?
Oh gosh, they're the highlights. You tend, like I just did, you tend to highlight the celebrity stuff because people react to that. They're like, "What? Harrison Ford? That's cool, man. Tell me about that." So they make good stories, and that was fun. That day with Harrison Ford made a fantastic story, and it always will. But I also cherish the times where I meet strangers who have no business being in the paper other than maybe I stumbled upon them, and we find a reason to get them in the paper. And we did a series called Project Dateline at the Herald Leader that was one of my all-time favorite things to do. And it was really about nothing, but we found a mechanism to go out into the community and tell stories of just normal people. What we did was we would pick a name of a place. We'd get on the Atlas, the Kentucky Atlas, and we would scour the state and find the strangest named places. And we go, okay, boom, that's where we're going to go next week. And the reporter and I would get up at the butt crack of dawn, and we'd be there early when the light was good. And we would just find whatever we found. We'd knock on doors. We'd find a farmer in the field. We'd find somebody raking the grass or sweeping their porch, and we would just make a story out of it. And it was the most pure thing, and I loved it and still love it. But they weren't celebrities. They weren't criminals. They were just people, and I love that. But some of the other things, I've seen, I tell all new photographers or people who are interested in photojournalism that the camera is like the golden ticket, and the press pass is the golden ticket. We are the first witnesses to history. We are the documentarians of these important things that are happening. It could be anything from a basketball game, a championship game. We talked about Michigan State, UK today, I think, in class.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got Izzo and Chuck Hayes picture.
Yeah, the picture of Chuck Hayes and Tom Izzo, documenting that moment. I'm so glad I was there to be able to witness that and to document that moment. That was really special to a small group of people that were players, but then a larger group of people, the fans as well. Even you guys in the class today, when we talked about that, knew that moment, knew of that game. And that was a long time ago.
I didn't know because I'm a Louisville fan, but the other classmates knew.
Yeah, they knew about it. And I don't know when that was, but they knew all the details. And I'm pretty sure they didn't watch that game live. They might have, but they would have been, they would have been 10 years old or something.
Yeah.
8 years old. So, being, and then the older I get, the more I've realized that these things that I've seen have a lasting impact. And they're historical in nature. And as we talk some more, I'll think about some more to tell you about. But seriously, the photographers have the best jobs because we have to be there. We have to be in the front of everything to see it happen and to photograph it happening. And that can include the bad stuff too, I'm afraid to say. Because news news can be terrible. It can be floods. It can be murders. It can be violent crimes. It can be I can't tell you how many perp walks I've had to photograph. I've had to photograph funerals. It is the thing I hate to photograph the most. Anytime you tell me to go photograph a funeral, I just want to take the day off. It is the worst thing that we could possibly do, I think, but it is something that we've always done. And I never understood why we did it, but we would cover funerals. And it was famous people typically, but still. Nobody wants us there at a funeral. It just drove me crazy to have to do that. And I hated it with everything in me to have to go do that kind of thing.
So just going off of that, have there been moments where you almost just kind of like just said like F it, like you didn't want to do it? Like there was like a time where you just like question your ethics. Like you said, when you was told or asked to go shoot funerals, you just was not in the mood for it. Like how many times in your career, or were there just certain moments where you almost just like, I'm not going to do this, or you just question yourself, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I take this picture? Like, talk to me about that.
There's been a lot of times when I have to question myself whether or not I should take this picture or take that picture. And you have to make a judgment call on the fly, what the news value is of that moment. And sometimes you don't know what the news value is until later. And so we're trained to take the picture first and then you think about it later.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are other times where you just have to make an assessment right there and you go, this doesn't have news value. It's not going to be something, and it's going to cause more problems than not for me to take this picture. And you just turn around and walk away. I have one thing that happened to me really early in my career that was horrible. And I blame this newspaper for doing this to me. And I didn't know any better, and it might be why I hate funerals now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was applying for my first job. And I had graduated from Western, and I took an internship at the Herald Leader the summer after I graduated. And during that internship, I was looking for a job, and this was in the early 1990s. And I got applied for a job at a newspaper in Connecticut. And I never heard of the place, but it was a job, and daily newspaper. It was like 70,000 circulation. 4 photographers or something like that. And so they took me up there. They brought me up there to interview for the job. And part of the interview process was to give me some photo assignments. And they wanted to see what I could do with these assignments. These guys, the day before I got there, well, maybe the week before I got there, there was a local story where there was a tragic drinking and driving accident. And in that accident was a young teenager who'd been on a motorbike, and he'd taken up with some motorcycle guys. And they'd been drinking, and he somehow crashed and he died. So there's just one teenager who died. Well, they sent me out to cover the funeral of this kid who had died in a drinking accident. And I knew nothing about the city, knew nothing about the story. I was not connected to the town, had no authority of any kind or background. And they sent me to this funeral, and a graveside funeral even at that. And I was out there, and I dressed appropriately and I had my cameras, and these motorcycle dudes came up to me and they saddled up next to me, and they basically said, "We don't want you here." And I said, "Okay, I kind of get that." But it's kind of doing my job. And I'm like 21 or something. I don't know, 22, and trying to calm them down. And, but at the same time, I'm like, man, I'm told to get out here and do this assignment. And what if I come back with nothing and they're not going to hire me and they're going to think I'm terrible at my job? And I was really trying to talk to these people, talk them into letting me document this and give this kid a voice, in a sense, is what I was trying to tell them to do. And they basically said, if we see that you've published a picture, we're going to come find you and hunt you down.
Wow.
So I stuck around a little bit longer, and then I left, and I didn't take any pictures, of course. And, I don't remember what happened after that, but that was like, they shouldn't have sent me to that.
Yeah.
It was a terrible thing for them to do.
Especially that was your first assignment too?
Yeah.
Your very first assignment.
But it was like a job interview assignment
Mm-hmm.
in a place I'd never been before and didn't know anything about this stuff. I'm still mad at them for that. And it's probably why I hate funerals now that I think about it. But I just don't think, unless you're invited, or have permission to be at a funeral. And there are some cases, like we talked about today, that those are relevant to go cover. But yeah, there's other times when, and it's usually during those really tragic times when you say, "Oh, what am I doing? Why am I here? What am I doing this for?" But the older I got and the more experience that I got, the editors trusted me, and I could make those judgment calls on the fly. And they would be okay with that. But that took a long time for me to gain the confidence to know when I was right and be able to justify that, and for my editors to trust me that I was going to be right, and be able to just walk away from something and say, we shouldn't be there, or it's just not here, or something like that. And there were times early on in my career too where I just wasn't sure this is what I wanted to do, because we teach, my professors taught me, and I'm sure I'm teaching you guys the ideal, the best we could possibly be. Like the stuff that we're talking about in our class right now, the reality of you being able to be given the time and to produce a story like that, say at a local television station, is pretty slim.
Mm-hmm.
And when we go out there in the real world and are faced with the realities of tight deadlines and limited resources, trying to think of the word there, tight deadlines, limited resources, and some editors that just care more about volume than they do quality, that kind of hits you hard. Like, you got to find a place that cares as much as you do. And there are times where I've worked at places. I did get that job in Connecticut. They hired me, and it was the worst job I ever had.
Did you have more assignments like that?
I should have known it. Yeah, I did.
Oh,
and
man.
they were terrible. And, I came in there like a hot stallion out of the gate. And like, I know, like, a photojournalist, I got a degree, and I've been all these internships and these awards coming out of school. And these people are like,
ready.
I was ready to go. And they sent me to this one assignment on a Saturday night. I got the weekend shifts because I'm the new guy. And on a Saturday night, they sent me to this, it was like this art gallery opening or something. And I worked that thing so hard. I was like pulling every trick out of my bag. I was using like silhouettes and composition and layering and making these beautiful pictures. And I came back with like 8 or 10, this is back on a film day too. Came back with, 8 or 10 pictures that they wanted. My editor looked at me and goes, what is this stuff? I'm like, you told me to go do this gallery thing. I mean, I shot these great pictures. That's as good as I could do. Are they not good enough? Because I'm thinking I couldn't have done any better. Because it was just people standing around with drinks and stuff and looking at walls. Well, it turns out this was a society column, and they wanted me to just go take pictures of people like holding their martinis and looking in the camera and smiling.
Did they tell you that beforehand?
They didn't tell me that.
Oh,
they assumed I knew what this was because they had some, gallery thing, Saturday night gallery thing. I'm like, I didn't know what this thing was. And so they're like, this is what you want me to do? You want me to go take pictures of people like staring at the camera, drinking? Like, that's not what I signed up for. And it took, I found another job in like 11 months, and I went out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming was my second job. So a complete reversal. I was making pretty good money in Connecticut, but the job sucked. And went to Wyoming, and the job was fantastic, but the money sucked.
Yeah.
But God, it's beautiful out there. And I learned so much out there. It was a weekly paper. I did everything at that paper. I mean, took pictures as a photo editor. I redesigned the paper and was doing, digital, photo layouts and front page layouts. I delivered the paper. One day we even had the machine broke, and we had to manually insert stuff in the paper. The only thing I didn't do there was sell ads. Wrote stories. It was fantastic. Best job.
You did everything.
Did everything. And I recommend that for anybody, to do everything in a job. And so, because you know what, when you do somebody else's job, you're a lot less likely to criticize that person, because you know what it takes. You know what it takes to put inserts in those papers after you've done it once.
You get to like feel, and you actually get to walk in their shoes. Cause like, I know some people sometimes, like, you might criticize somebody like, oh, they got it easy. Their job is easy. But once you actually step in those shoes of like filling paper into that machine, you guys like, oh yeah, it's harder than I thought.
Yeah. You got a lot of respect for your coworkers once you start doing their jobs.